Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'm delighted to be here. I love talking about identity. I work as developer advocate for the team, so I'm part of the developer advocacy team. I work as a program manager. I still write software though, so a lot of getting my hands dirty with software, and hopefully at the end of the session, I will inspire you to write slightly better, more secure software using the right tools. And this will be a tour around the Microsoft Identity Platform. We're going to talk about the different flavors, how you can use it in code, how you can get started, and how you can enrich users' experience using things like Graph or Azure to help them out, help your users out. If you like what we do today or what I show today and you get a nice taster, we also have a stream that we do every Monday and Friday at 10 a.m. We use tweets, but we also stream on YouTube. If you come to aks.ms45 show, you can find us. You can ask questions, you can bring us your challenges, you can bring us your victories. You can come on the show with us and code live. We try to address solutions and end-to-end scenarios that developers tend to have problems with. And we'll try to span multiple technologies. So even though we are Microsoft Identity at heart, identity is just a component of the bigger challenge that you face as developers. And probably this is what I'll be covering today, your challenges as a developer to integrate with an identity system and how you can do it quickly and securely. I've worked with very many customers. I was in the UK working as a PFE for 3 years before I moved to the US to work as a program manager. So part of my job was speaking to these customers and seeing how they implement solutions. And I helped quite a few of them deal with security. So I did security training, we did OWASP, we did many things because whether you like it or not, as soon as you write software, as soon as you put it out in the public domain, it becomes a target. And the reason why we don't want developers to roll out their own artisan identity system, the login, log out, managing passwords and what have you, is because, as you can see here, and this is just the tip of the iceberg, so many companies have made the news because of lacks in security implementations. And it's not just the user data, it's the user management, it's also the secure development lifecycle. It's also how do your developers write secure software without really having access to production passwords and what have you. So as you can see here, over 10 billion accounts, or nearly 10 billion accounts. This is from December last year. So I'm pretty sure we hit the 10 billion mark. 10 billion accounts have been compromised through various websites in the recent years. If you know Troy Hunt, he's a security expert from Australia. He created this tool called the Have I Been Pwned website, where you can go and type your email address and you can find out whether that email address was ever compromised or found in a site that was compromised by security. So it's a great website to look at, but it also provides an insight into how bad our security is these days. And you might say, well, you know what? I don't have to worry about these things. I know what I'm doing. But I've worked with many developers out there, and sometimes they will go and do silly things. They will say, oh, you know what? My manager has asked me to go and set up a forgot password in my form. And I will give you an example. If you search on Google or Bing for a solution like how do I create a forgot password in ASP.NET. Obviously, this is slightly older now, so most people do .NET Core, but this used to come on the first page, probably one in the top 5 results. And not taking a specific aim at this guy that wrote this, but imagine a young developer in your company joining and being asked to implement something. Obviously, the first thing they're going to do is go on the web and search for it. So in this form, this person has so many security holes and so many issues. He's opening his website to SQL injection. He's sending passwords over clear text. And in effect, this is something that we want to avoid. We want people to stay away from managing username and passwords in their own databases. Now you might say, well, I know what I'm doing. I'm hashing everything. I'm securing everything. I don't have to worry about that. But there are other challenges for organizations as well. If you think about the growth of your systems, then you might start with one website or one application that manages users, and then you have another one that may be using a different database. So suddenly you have another database with users sitting somewhere else, and so on and so on. So these things grow, and it becomes very hard to manage things. So from an identity perspective, from a user management perspective, or user data perspective, we want to help you grow with your company. So your solution should grow as your company grows, as your user base grows. But you also want to ensure that it's done securely and it's done in a way that you don't have to worry about things. So as you can see right here, our platform is insanely large. We have 1,500 engineers that work day in, day out writing identity code. So you don't have to write identity code. That's the key here. 30 billion authentications per day. That is insane. I actually had to reach out to marketing and validate that number because it looks astronomically big. 30 billion authentications per day. And this is not just the sign in, sign out. This is the data that we get as well. So if somebody tries to log in with your account from Australia while you are based in Germany, then we can actually pick that up and notify your IT team to say, well, there is some irregular traffic over here. So we give you a lot of insights as well. It's not just the amount of data that we handle, but it's the analytics, the AI, the machine learning that runs behind the scenes for you to help you protect your users and your data. And you can see we have over 350 million active users per month. So that means they use the system daily. And most of the larger organizations out there will have an Azure AD tenant, whether they know it or not. So if you have Office 365 in your company, then you have an Azure AD tenant. If you have Azure, you also have an Azure AD tenant, which means that you get this for free without you having to do any extra work. And it's surprising how many customers don't realize that, or developers don't realize that they have an existing identity system in their infrastructure and don't have to pay for an extra solution out there. So we have a hugely scalable solution, but you as a developer, you care for specific things. So first and foremost, I just mentioned that, does my company have an existing identity system? If your manager comes to you and says, we need to create a new website and we need to authenticate users to that website, whether it's a line of business app or an external app, do I have something I can work with today, or do I have to go and do my research? If you're Office 365, if you're on Azure, you have this for free. How easy and quick is it to authenticate users or add authentication to my solution? Well, hopefully after today, you'll see that it only takes a few lines of code. And I don't want you to be experts in identity. You can be experts, nothing wrong with that. But I know that most developers think or feel that identity is one of the 25 items in their checklist when it comes to implementing things. So you spending 3 weeks trying to understand protocols and frameworks and tokens and what have you, it's not what I want you to spend your time on. I want you to do it easily and securely and move on to the next task. So we'll see how easy it is to implement authentication. Does it support or integrate well with the platform and language they use? So if you are a .NET developer, perfect, you can use that. But our identity platform spans so many different technologies. In fact, we joke around when we say Azure AD is neither Azure nor AD. So it's not the traditional LDAP, Kerberos things that you're using doing on-prem. And at the same time, it's not Azure, because even though it sits inside the Azure tenant, you can actually have an Azure AD tenant without an Azure AD subscription, and can also run Azure AD on solutions like AWS or Google Cloud. So imagine having your Google Office authenticating users via Azure AD. This is something that we offer. Your Salesforce can also benefit from single sign-on. And if you're running solutions on AWS that we have lots of customers do, they can also use Azure AD to authenticate. So it's not tied to Azure. You don't have to have Azure, and you don't have to think in terms of Active Directory. It's a new modern system, and it supports all the languages. So Go, Python, Ruby, Node, .NET, Java. We support all the major frameworks, and of course, things. So as a developer, you're like, fine, okay, I can integrate the identity system into my solution. But what else do I get for free? And there are so many other things you get for free. Obviously, as a developer, you integrate with the SDKs, or you create and write your own OpenID Connect libraries. And then you get things like conditional access, where your IT team will say certain users can access certain applications based on some rules that we set up. And that's implemented for you, to you for free, and your users for free. multi-factor authentication. If you ever had to roll out your own multi-factor authentication system, it means that you have to pull a lot of different systems like emails and notifications and email alerts and what have you. It's a very, very complex solution. Why not get it for free out of the box as part of the integration with the identity platform, right? So what do we offer you? For these questions, the answers are reduce sign-in friction. So we want you to help you implement the sign-in, sign-out functionality, but also want to make it easy for you to reach millions of users. You can start with one user and then go to 10,000 users per second. You see that our platform scales 30 billion authentications per day. Access organizational data, fine. So I have my users are signing into my application, but how can they access other things? My databases, my APIs, my notification systems. Whether you're running on Azure or not, you need to secure these things, whether you're on-prem, for example. So your front end needs to speak to the back end securely as well. Many people forget about this element of identity providers, right? You have your logged in user, they get some tokens, and then they can speak to other services. How easy we make that, you'll see in a bit. Complying with IT, that's very important. We talked about disparate databases and user information scattered around. What happens when the users, for example, leave your company? What happens if someone is currently logged into your app and they have to leave the company? Those tokens, in fact, remain live for a certain amount of time, usually 60 minutes. So for the next 60 minutes, that specific person will be able to sign into the app until that token expires. So we are actually doing a continuous assessment, or we're implementing continuous assessment as part of our preview functionality that is rolling out, that will allow you to quickly invalidate tokens when somebody leaves the org. So you remove them from Azure AD. They should not be able to access any of the systems anymore, even though they have an authenticated token. How amazing is that? And you don't have to do anything as a developer. Your IT team will manage that, along with many other features like conditional access, other policies as well. And finally, safeguarding access to your app to only authorized users. Authentication and authorization, access tokens, and everything else you need to pass in, they all work in tandem. So if I sign into my app, I get specific permissions to speak to specific APIs as long as my authorization is set up correctly through claims and roles. In some cases, these systems will be built into your solution. So if you're .NET, then there's just a simple authorized tag or attribute that you need to add to your solution to take advantage of this role-based authentication and authorization. Right. So how do you get started? As a developer, you're like, okay, awesome, I like it. Christos, show me what's next. There are two different things that you have to do when it comes to integrating with the identity platform. The first one is creating an app registration inside Azure AD. And in fact, we will see this as I do my demo in a bit on how you create an app registration. This shows your intent. You say to Azure AD or B2C that you're going to be using that to authenticate or users or acquire access tokens for an API later on. So you start with that. You can do it in the portal using your UI, or you can programmatically configure that via MS Graph or PowerShell or the Azure CLI. We give you the options to automate that, but usually when people get started, they like to do it in the portal, and we'll do one in the portal this morning. So once you have the Azure AD component nailed down, then the next thing is to bring some libraries into your solution so you can start working with the identity system. In ASP.NET, it's as easy as going into Visual Studio or using the Azure CLI and say, file new project. I want to create a new solution. I want to add authentication. And at that point, it will ask you what authentication you want to use, whether it's multi-tenant or not. And that brings down the libraries that you need to use. That's the MSAL library. I'll take a quick break over here just to mention that MSAL is the current library that we have, the Microsoft Authentication library. This is the one that you use to interact with our identity system, Azure Active Directory and Azure Active Directory B2C. There is also an older version called ADAL that we announced a deprecation of. So as of June 2022, that library will not be supported anymore. We know a large number of customers right now that are relying on that ADAL library, either directly or indirectly via packages that they've used to authenticate against our systems. ADAL is using the V1 endpoint It does not support the modern features that I explained earlier on. So if you are one of these people, I would urge you to go back to your code, scan through your dependencies, and make sure that you start migrating to MSAL. If you need support, if you need help, you can reach out to me, and we will hook you up with the right people in our team to help you migrate securely and quickly and efficiently to the new library. So make sure that you are aware of the deprecation of ADAL that is happening in about 2 years. Plenty of time, just mentioning that. Now, you might say, well, Chris, we're not using ADAL, we're not using MSAL. We already have an OpenID Connect library like Passport in Node, and I want to use that. That's absolutely fine. As long as you use an OpenID Connect compliant library, we have OpenID certified endpoints. So Azure Active Directory and B2C both use OpenID Connect and know what to allow you to communicate with the system. So you don't have to use our libraries. Bring your own libraries. We're more than happy to help you out. In some cases, you might be calling another API in the backend, and that could also be things like storage or Cosmos or another database or your own APIs. So that requires a little bit of configuration on the Azure AD side of things. But once you have all that, you have your solution. Now, when it comes to choosing your identity system, there are two flavors. And I like to keep it I like to keep it simple, unless you have a different scenario that we can also cover. It's a little bit more advanced. But if you are developing for your organization, if you're going to authenticate users that are part of your org, so at Microsoft.com, at Contoso.com, then you're looking at a line of business app. And this is where Azure AD comes in. Azure AD allows you to authenticate users using their company's credentials or the organizational school credentials, because schools also are part of that. So these are line of business apps, ledger, invoicing, reporting, what have you. But if you are building an app for yourself, if you're building an app for a friend, if you're creating a mobile app and you want users to come in and sign up and manage their account. So if you're creating a forum website for your best friend and you want them to be able to manage users, then in that case, you are looking at the B2C, a business to consumer or business to customer, which is the one that it manages with external users. So for example, if Walmart wanted to create a website where customers can go and buy foods and register their accounts and do that, then they're using B2C, and they can have both flavors, right? Walmart can have internal line of business apps they're using Azure AD for, and then they have B2C for their customers to come and buy food. So this is the clear distinction. B2C is a username and password database that you can also use social media accounts to help your users sign in. So they might sign in with their Twitter account or their Facebook account, which is so common. But for Azure AD, they have to use their organizational accounts. These two flavors are the ones that you should be concerned most likely. There are other things like external identities and business to business, where as a company, I open an API to another company to come and pull data or push data. And they're built on top of these two flavors. So technically, that's all I want you to know about the identity platform from our end. And I already mentioned that we're built on top of our industry standard. So if you already are using an OpenID Connect library, you don't have to strip all that out and bring our libraries. You can come as you are, as we say. I think now it's a good time to do a demo, because I've been speaking for the last 20 minutes and I don't think my voice is the best. Right. So for this demo, I'm going to show you how you can get started with the Microsoft Identity Platform. So we talked about the app registration. This is how you get started, and we're going to build a .NET Core app. Let me know if you would like to see something else. I'll do a Node app as well, just in case. So let's see here. Right. Okay. So we'll create a new registration. Right. We will call it Reactor Demo. We will keep organization accounts in this organization. So we're using Azure AD, and in here, we're going to leave it as that. We'll fix it in a bit. So this is all it takes in Azure AD to register an app. Sorry, maybe I should take a step back and show you how I got there. So in app registrations, you come here and you choose the one, should be down here, all the way down here. I think I need to make this bigger so you guys can see. And this is my client ID, my tenant ID. This is what I will need to use in a bit. The only thing I have to add here right now to allow my code to authenticate users is to add the platform. So we will choose web, and we'll say this is going to be, since it's .NET, we're going to use localhost 5000. And let's click on this one and say configure. But we can also add multiple URIs. So if you have, if you want to use this same app registration in test and then QA and production environments with different URLs, you can add them. In this instance, I'm going to add an HTTPS endpoint as well to allow us to localhost. And because usually .NET Core runs on HTTPS and 5001. So let's save this one. Let's make it bigger. And now I'm going to come here and I'm going to create a new project. So let's go .NET. Oh no, let's create a new directory here. Reactor demo. Oh, this yesterday. I think it's. Is it gonna work? Oh yeah, it doesn't recognize that. It's fine. So did you create a folder? Yeah, there you go. So let's move into that. Let's clear here, and then let's do .NET new web app. I'm going to create a new web app, and we're going to use authentication single org. This says to our .NET CLI, we're going to create a new web app using Azure Pages, and it's going to use Azure AD as the authentication provider. You can also do B2C or multi-tenant if you want to. What does it say? Author Microsoft in pack. To use this template, run the following command. Interesting. Oh, you know what? It's because I installed .NET 5 yesterday. Let's run this one and see if this fixes the problem. It's downloading the templates. Okay. Take two. See, this is live demos, right? Okay, we're creating the project now. Sweet. And I will speak about the templates in a bit. But for now, let's open code and see what we have inside our code base. Let's make this big. I like for you guys to be able to see the code. Right. So we've created our app registration inside Azure. We put our intent. Now let's see what we need to do in code to enable authentication here. We'll start with the dependencies. You'll see here that we have two libraries, Microsoft Authenticate Web and Microsoft Authenticate Web UI. These are the new libraries that we implemented for .NET Core, ASP.NET Core, to allow you to quickly authenticate to Azure AD or B2C, and we simplified the process significantly. So you download the NuGet packages, or if you already use the templates, then you do that. Then inside startup, I'll highlight where the authentication code goes. So you'll see here we have services add authentication with add Microsoft Identity web app. This is telling our middleware in ASP.NET Core that we're going to be using identity Azure AD to authenticate. You know, so it points to a configuration section. Yes, that's fine. Inside our configuration, so in app settings, this is where I put my configuration settings. Oh, you'll see that we have some junk information here. So let's go and fix this one. It says instance is correct. It's always going to be logged into Microsoft.com. My domain is not right, so let's change that. That should be my custom domain. So cmatcus on Microsoft.com. Our tenant ID is our Azure AD tenant. So let's go and find that from our app registration. Let's go back into our overview. And here we have our tenant ID. Let's grab that. Back to the code. So far, I haven't written any code, right? Just configuration settings so far. Let's go and grab our client ID, which should be here. Let's grab that and put it here. There's also no secrets. So this information is not sensitive if you put it in your settings file. And we need to update our callback path. This is where we get redirected once we authenticate inside Azure AD. So in my authentication, I need to come and fix my URIs. Just do that and that. Save this information. And now with 2 lines of code. So let's go back to our startup. We got the configuration all correctly done. we got authentication. In the authorization, we say here, you know what? Every time that a user comes to the website, redirect them to our authentication first, and then to provide a user interface, the UI, we have a DLL that wraps the login pages, the logout pages in here. So with one statement, so 1, 2, 3 lines of code, add the authentication components. Then down here, you'll notice that we also make sure that the app is using authentication. Let's not forget that one. Usually it comes out of the box with user authorization, but not use authentication. And with all that, now we should be good to roll. So if I say .NET run, will it run? .NET run is building. I hope you're all excited. If you're .NET developers, we have .NET Conf next week, and we're announcing all the new bits there. Microsoft Identity Web is going to be part of that discussion because it's super new. Hey, look at that. It's running. So let's get the browser up and see what happens. Oh, damn. What's the problem? Unable to retrieve documents. Huh. Interesting. You know what? It could be .NET 5 messing up with my settings. Unable to delay configuration. Something is wrong. Why? Interesting. Okay. Let me find another demo that is already working, and it's probably using a different .NET 3.1. I don't know if, see, that's what happens when you run on the latest and greatest. That is .NET 3.1. But it could be that the .NET runtime is .NET 5, and that's why it's not compiling. What does it say? Unable to retrieve document. There's a way to show that, but I don't want to troubleshoot that for now. Right, we'll skip that, and I'll come back with a working demo. So let's ignore it. But the point here is that it takes 3 lines of code to add authentication. So there we are. There are some questions, so let me take some questions before I move on. Apart from the platform, what's the difference between the tweets off and the YouTube channels? Sorry, that is tweets is where our videos end up after we do our live stream, because tweets does not store the videos for too long. So everything that we do, we clear out, we cut all the junky bits, and we put them on YouTube. Next question is, when creating a .NET Core project, if you include authentication, select the tenant, it then includes tenant name, ID, and client ID in your app settings. Should this be visible in an open source project? Yeah, tenant ID and client ID are not sensitive information, so you can feel free to put them inside your apps. Obviously, if you enable everyone to come in and sign in, then you could get charged for the sign-in attempts. So what we recommend is always enable two-factor authentication for your apps. So if people try to come in, also you need to, if you're using B2C, for example, there's a way to request for the people to, for when they try to register for the first time, to get a security code that need to add into the sign up process so they can move on. This is all by default, but it means that if they don't provide that code, that you don't get charged for the sign-ins. And by charge, I mean you get 50,000 free authentications per month, so you don't have to worry about that. It's the case of, you know, you put it out there and people start trying to do it, and you don't want to spend those 50,000 free logins to that. Is there any plan to regionalize the AD-B2C database for compliance? I need to get back to you on that one. I don't know what the plan is right now. B2C is a little bit up in the air with external identities and what have you, but I think there's a plan to unify and simplify the offering. But I will ask about localization because I also had that question yesterday. Any plans to improve the dev experience of custom policies, which is currently horrible? Yeah, I think that refers back to B2C, and I feel you, my friend. It's a lot of XML, so we are working hard. There was also conversation about being able to implement that in code, like using C# to define the policies. The team is working hard at that. I don't know where we are with the current offerings, but rest assured and that your feedback is shared, and we hear that all the time from our customers. Did you say tenant ID and client ID are not secret? Yes, they're not secret. We're not hiding them. Why would they be secret? Secrets are things like client secret, which you shouldn't be using. You should be using certificates, for example, because they're easier to maintain. They're better in how we manage the certificates. but it's not a secret information, so we don't hide them. I know that comes as a shocker because I used to hide them as well when I first joined the team, and everybody said you should not be doing them. But yeah, your app settings should not be saved, hence the demo is failing. It's not saved. They will not save them. Huh. Nice. Let's see if that works. I like it. Crowdsource for the win. It's a little bit early for me. It's like 7 o'clock, so I haven't had lots of coffee yet. So let's see what happens. Second time lucky. And then we'll do a node one as well. Thank you very much, sir. Or lady. So I'm going to use my signed in account. It should prompt me for accepting, consenting to the permissions I have in my app. Right now, we're only doing OpenID Connect. So I will say, yes, you can access my profile information. We'll accept it. And there you have it. I'm signed in. 4 lines of code. Thank you very much. Anonymous. Pity I can't see your name. Well, that's the first one. If you also want to see how APIs work, let's go and see, because APIs are a different beast. There's no UI for you there. So Reactor demo API. So here I'm going to do .NET new web API 2 and then auth org. It's not web API. Is it web API 2? Single org is not a valid value for auth. Interesting. What did I put? Oh, I missed an E. Single org. There you go. So that's created. Let's go and see that one. So as I said, APIs are different because they don't really have a UI. So what you need to do is you need to use the middleware to validate the incoming tokens. Hopefully there are incoming tokens, so you have a secure API. And then you also need to validate that the user has the right claims. Now, in the past, this was quite involved and quite a bit of code I had to write, especially to tap into OpenID Connect. And now you'll see how we've oversimplified that by using Microsoft Authenticate. So let's go back into our app settings. Similar setup, so it creates the AD configuration for us. And then inside startup, the main difference here is that we have add Microsoft Identity Web API instead of web app. And that instructs the identity code to look for tokens now instead of prompting users for authentication. So this is the first component over here. And then the second one is down here, the use authentication. So again, 2 lines of code. Now, with APIs, we also do some other things as well. So it's usually quite common for an API to call another service, acts as a proxy. Maybe it's calling a database, maybe it's calling another API or multiple APIs. So if you were to configure that one, there is an easy way to do it. First and foremost, we need to enable token acquisition to call downstream APIs. This, in effect, instructs our middleware to do that. So the incoming token will come in and then we'll say, you know what, we also need to speak to another API. We need to speak to another service. Go and grab the information from Azure AD. And since we're going to be doing that quite frequently, we need to also add a token. So you'll see here we have a number of, token cache. You'll see here that we have a number of token caches out of the box. You don't have to do anything yourselves. So you have distributed token cache if you want to use something like Cosmos or SQL or Redis. We have in-memory and session tokens. So let's do in-memory. And the other thing that you might have seen there was the add downstream web API. This is a new functionality that we added recently that allows you to register the other API code. So let's say we have weather service and location service. You can register the location service in here and then inject it into the dependency injection chain. So when you need to call that, that service will be authenticated and will be getting the right authorization headers to go and call the downstream API. So in effect, we're wrapping everything in a nice bow for you, and we're delivering that. So with 4 lines of code, I've created super complex functionality here, and we can have multiple services, obviously. But in the past, that was a lot of code, and I'll show you how that code looks like. But there you have it. With 4 lines of code, I added some super complex stuff. token validation, token acquisition, token caching, and calling downstream APIs, right? Now, if we jump into the weather forecast, nope, always do that. I always do that. Anyway, here is our controller. This is where the calls will come in. So first and foremost, we have an authorize. So we need to make sure that the calls contain the right authorization header. And then down here, you're probably gonna love this one. If you ever had to validate claims and make sure that the user has the right scopes, that was about 20 lines of code I had to roll out every single time. We wrapped it in a nice single liner. So with HTTP context, that's part of the web identity library. You say verify that the user has any accepted scopes, and you pass in an array here. So that array is just sitting here. Right now, we only have one scope in there. So every time a call comes in, we will make sure that the user has the right scopes included. So before they can move on into calling the rest of the function. So as you can see, for an API, it took me less than 5 lines of code, 6 lines of code to securely do token validation, token caching, call other services, and even check the claims. So from my perspective, this is super exciting, and I would love to see that for other languages as well. In fact, if you would like to see that for Node, Java, and what have you, our team is open to feedback, and they are looking at this kind of feedback. If you are, so that we have questions, in an app settings to JSON, what is the user secrets ID for? I think this one is used for if you're storing local secrets. It creates a file for you, and that stores the ID, the GUID to that file, so you can add secrets that are specific to your application. However, these secrets live somewhere in clear text in your file. So I advise against doing that. In fact, ASP.NET Core has amazing integration with Key Vault that you can use out of the box in your local development environment using the identity system. So we'll use your account to go into Key Vault and pull that information across. I just put a blog post out there. So if you go into my blog posts, and if you're curious about how to do secure development end to end, if you go into here, sorry for the self-promotion, but this is something I would love for you guys to start using if you are curious about how to do secure development. So the new Azure SDKs allow you to easily speak to Key Vault. And you can see here, we pull all the configuration settings from Key Vault at startup. And I'm also calling a Key Vault get secret in real time as well. So if I need to explicitly go and get a value at the time I need it. So you can pre-populate your configuration settings for ASP.NET Core using Key Vault. And you can also do an explicit call into Key Vault. And as you'll see here, there is no, we have credentials. I'm not passing any credentials. This solution, it's on GitHub as well. There's no use any credentials whatsoever. There's no key for Key Vault. There's no an API key for Key Vault. There's no keys for anything else. Everything I pull is from Key Vault. So just going back to the secrets, I would say avoid using local secrets and do it right by using Key Vault and Azure AD. If you are pairing an ASP.NET Core web, if you're pairing your ASP.NET Core web APIs with front-end single-page apps like Angular, then what is the correct OAuth flow to use, implicit or authorization code? Nice question, really good question. For Angular, I think we're planning on an MSAL.js 2.0 wrapper for Angular to come before the end of the year, not committing on to hard dates, but we announced MSAL.js 2.0 back at Build. So that's 4 months ago, which does away with implicit flow. There's no implicit flow anymore with MSAL.js 2.0. We're using Pixie, a public key code exchange that allows you to do away with storing a client secret or an app ID secret inside your code. So it does away with that. So you're using the proper Pixie flow to authorization code with Pixie to go and grab the token ID and the ID token and the access tokens for your APIs. And then from then on, the flow is the usual, right? Your API hopefully is using ident.web. And at the back end, what you get is a call from your MSAL.js to your .NET Core API, all done using the latest and greatest. So, and V2 endpoints as well. So that's the right flow to use now. I think that the Angular wrapper, the MSAL.js, the raw one, is supporting Pixie. I think we're working on a wrapper for Angular because we do have an Angular MSAL that is is going to come out with full support for Pixie. Is it possible to do the token validation in the middleware itself instead of the controller action? The token will be validated, so incoming calls will be there. But are you asking about the scopes? Like, are you asking whether the call has the right scopes to that question, or what kind of validation? By the way, I'm just going to jump back to the slides here. So we had the two demos and back to the slides. Let's go quickly because I didn't say come as you are, bring your own tools. So the next slide may be a shocker for some of the Microsoft communities that we speak to, but you'll see there's nothing Microsoft here. And all these things work with our identity system. So Bitbucket, IntelliJ. In fact, for IntelliJ, we just released for Rider a new integration with Azure AD, so you can do file new project inside Rider and get the same experience as in Visual Studio. We're also working on their IntelliJ IDE for Java to also have the same experience, and PyCharm as well. We want people to be able to use their tools that they love to speak to AWS or Google or Azure using a secure infrastructure and a secure end-to-end system. Any language, Java, Python, JavaScript, it doesn't have to be Microsoft. We support all these languages. And obviously, whether you're running on serverless, whether you're running on Kubernetes, bare metal, on-prem, or different platforms, we do support this kind of secure end-to-end. In fact, one of the upcoming demos that we have, probably stealing the thunder here, but I don't know if you're going to be watching .NET Conf next week, we're doing a demo where we're using MSI, the Microsoft, it's managed identities outside of Azure. So right now, managed identities are only available on Azure. Using Arc, we're going to spin up machines outside, so on-prem, using managed identities to securely speak to other systems inside Azure without you having to pass any credentials whatsoever. So as you can see here, it doesn't have to be Azure, it doesn't have to be one of our languages. We support everything and everyone. But if you are working with our toolchain, then all the better. Visual Studio, Visual Studio Code, the RCLI do support this very tight integration with the identity system. And then if you're speaking to Azure services, again, you don't have to authenticate. You can do that all via managed identities, so super secure. You can also tap into the Microsoft 365 platform via Graph, so you can get all that rich information. I don't know if you are using Office 365, but every time I go to type an email, I get this nice prompt. Who do you want to send the email to? The first few people that come up are the people I tend to collaborate quite frequently. This is a graph call that says, who does Christos work more frequently with? Let's present these people because most likely he's speaking to them again. So this is the kind of rich experience they can bring to your users, and doesn't have to be email, obviously. So moving on, I've already talked about how we simplify sign-in, and also you get single sign-in, right? So if I was using, this is my demo machine, so it's not properly signed into my domain, but my local machine, my proper machine, it's domain joined, and my profile inside Edge means that every time I go to a website that we own at Microsoft, I don't have to ever sign in. Unless I'm looking to HR data, which, it requires elevated permissions, and absolutely right. I don't want anybody jumping on my machine and being able to do that. But single sign-on means that your users don't have to remember 10 different passwords to 10 different systems. And the MSAL library supports that out of the box. User provisioning, obviously, if you provision your users inside Azure AD, we safeguard access to everyone that comes in. For B2C, you get other tools and policies to help you achieve that. You can build definitely new experiences and more rich experiences via the Graph integration. And then if you are developing apps as a SaaS solution for other people and you want to sell them, publisher verification that we added recently to our platform means that your customers can have confidence that this solution came from you or your company, and they can purchase it. It's not like somebody took the Salesforce name and created a random app that harvests data. So that's an important bit to build confidence in the marketplace as well. What's next? Integrating single sign-on. We have OpenID Connect and OAuth that support these things out of the box with the SDKs, and you can easily add Graph. SAML integration as well. Some people still use SAML out there. And we also have mobile SSO. So if your devices are in tuned, like mine are, then a lot of the tools I have to use use single sign-on, so I don't have to log into many of the company profile and websites I have to use. And that's, again, you don't have to write any code for that. It's all part of the platform. So we're definitely simplifying the process by using the latest libraries. You can also bring your own libraries. It is secure by default. As I said, even with JavaScript now, we've done away with implicit flow, which was super insecure and one of the biggest problems we had in the JavaScript space and single page apps. And the fact that these things work hand in hand with your IT team, it means that they can provision the policies and secure your users, and all you have to do is just implement it quickly. Obviously, if Marsha can do it, then Bob can do it too. I love this slide over here. So much code done away. Going back to Microsoft Authenticated Web, I did mention that if you're a .NET developer, this was announced very recently, and it's built on top of MSAL. It's supported on .NET Core 3.1 and later, ASP.NET Core 3.1 and later. So you can build anything that that platform supports. So Blazor, WASM, Blazor Server, Web APIs, Web App, and gRPC as well. In fact, I did a demo to the Graph team the other day about how to use gRPC, secure gRPC services with .NET and the Microsoft Identity Platform. If you are not developing on .NET or older .NET, then MSAL, the MSAL family of libraries supports you. .NET, Java, Python, iOS, Android native as well. And then finally, if you don't want to use our libraries, then you're more than welcome to bring your own OpenID Connect and OAuth 2 libraries. And we have many community libraries that have been written that work super well. But some of them lack some capabilities. I was talking to Java developers, our CDAs the other day, and they said, well, we implemented stuff with our customers, but we had to write our own caching system because the library that we're using for Java did not support it. So there are pros and cons with every approach. Hopefully we gave you the right tools. I'm going to skip this once because it does a comparison between the old and the new world of prior to Microsoft Identity Web and what you get now. We definitely have simplified the process. You can see many people ask, like, where do these things sit in terms of the older infrastructure that we had? Microsoft Identity Web wraps through all these different independent components and libraries that we had in the past, so you can still tap into the middleware. So if you need to do, you need to hook into events during the JOT validation, for example, the JWT validation, then you can do that in the middleware. If you need to tap into the time that your token is received, you can do that. If you need to change the way that your account controller views look and feel, then you can also do that. But we like to wrap this out of the box because 90% of the people will go with the defaults, and then that 10% that need to do that, they still have the capability to do so. So we did not remove that functionality, we just wrapped around it. And it's all sitting on top of MSAL. So as you can see, a lot less code now, a lot less involved in terms of how to implement, and I've shown you that in the demos. So I've done that. I'm going to show you very quickly what the older code looked like, because sometimes people like to see the difference. So if I go back here, so is it here? It is here. So I may have done some changes. Okay, so I'll open this in code just to show you how in the past we used to roll our middleware for OpenID Connect. So this is in the startup, and we go from line 32. This is where we add our authentication with the older technology. So line 32 all the way down to line 127. So 95 lines of code can be replaced by one line of code, more or less, using the Microsoft Identity Web. And if this doesn't say, if it doesn't give you chills, then I don't know what it does, because for me it's super exciting to not have to maintain all that code, right? So definitely a big improvement there. Now, you know, Node and everything else work similarly, not as little code as before, but I don't know if you've ever seen this one before. If you create a brand new app and you need to say, I want to quickly get started with it, you can go and create a single page app. So you can see that this already is using auth code, doesn't use implicit. So the nice thing here is that if you've never done anything with the Azure AD platform, you can use the quick start to guide you through the process. So first of all, it will say, do you want me to bring the information that we already have in the project here? Yeah, add that redirect there. So we'll do that for us, and then we can download the sample code. So let's put it somewhere here. Done. Let's grab that and quickly run it and see what happens. Let's do npm install first. And while this one is running, downloading half the internet. Can you migrate ADAL integrated identity server 4 to MSAL? That's a good question. I've never done it, but I suspect that you can. I don't see why not. Again, the ADAL code is something you need to take out and change, but we've already done a couple of streams on that, and we'll be doing some more. What about maintaining sign-in status when the browser closes? Do we still need to call sign-in async? Well, the MSAL library has a specific flow, right? So we'll try to silently acquire the token and find if you already have an authenticated user. You can also define how that token is stored, or the cookie is stored. So you can have a session, or you can have storage, so you can actually store it in the browser and maintain that across multiple tabs. Can't remember what happens when the browser closes though. So I think it destroys the object, if I remember correctly. But yeah, can I get a recorded session? Yes, that will be recorded. So let's see what happens now with your npm start. Will it run? Again, I didn't need to do any changes here, but we'll look in the code very, very quickly. I think this one is also calling graph as well, so it's doing a few things. So let's go into localhost. And it will prompt me to sign in. We'll use this one. Yes. And there you have it. I can grab my profile from Graph, and I can read my emails. Now, I haven't consented to my emails yet, so this one is saying, are you sure you want to give access to your emails? And you can see that we're doing incremental consent here, so I didn't have to ask all the permissions up front. This is one of the benefits that you can get with the V2 endpoints. So yes, I can give them access to my emails, and there you have it. Obviously, test tenant, so test emails. In terms of the code, yes. I'll terminate that, and I want to quickly open this in code so we can go a little bit and see what the code looks like. So in the app, we have the auth pop-up, and can have different options on how you do your authentication. And here you see that we're bringing the MSAL object down, and this one is the one that handles the sign in and sign out. Fairly simple code. It also gets the token for us, so we can pass the token later to our graph calls. So in graph, we pass the already acquired token, and we do the call to the graph API. So there's not much code here other than the auth config. Obviously, this is the one that the quick start did for us, configuring these things. And then we can define whether we want the pop-up or redirect. You can change how the app behaves. But if you've never done it before, I mean, I'm not a Node developer at heart, but this is a great starting point for me to see how it gets implemented. You know, we also did examples with Angular, Vue, and React. So if you want to see these in action, make sure you visit our YouTube channel. And let's go very, very quickly back to our slides. Let me see if there's a new question. Okay, no new questions. So I'm going to quickly cover Graph. In case you haven't seen Graph before, it is a way to build custom solutions that tap into your existing organizational data. So B2C does not have Graph. You can use Graph to manage B2C. So confusing. I know sometimes I confuse myself as well. So with MS Graph, you can provision things inside B2C, but B2C users do not have access to graph data, whereas organizational users can access their information on the tenants. That could be SharePoint, OneDrive. we simplified so many different disparate systems through one unified API, SharePoint, OneDrive, and that's both personal and organizational OneDrive. Sorry, that was wrong. I was organizational OneDrive, and any other data, emails, calendar information, what have you, all available to you and your users via the Graph API. There is an SDK that you can use. There are different flavors of the SDK. In fact, we have more SDKs for Graph than we have for MSAL, which is a little bit weird. But it allows you to, like, if you're writing PHP, then there's a PHP Graph SDK for you. And you can see that our customers are building super rich experiences, dashboards, portals, timelines, and then they're using them also in very different experiences. So we also have holographic solutions that tap into Graph via HoloLens. So it's super interesting what are people doing with Graph. And again, once you authenticate with MSAL, all you have to do is just pass the token, as you saw before, to the Graph object, and then you can either do it raw HTTP calls, or you can use the SDKs. In fact, the API is also fantastic. If you've never worked with Graph before, there's a great way to get started, aka.ms.ge, that's the Graph Explorer. And it's like a playground where you can find and come and discover things, so you don't have to write the code before you do it. You're like, how do I pull, say, my profile, right? How can I pull information there? All right, okay, so it's Graph, Microsoft.com, V1, me. So there's all these different extensions here and all these different endpoints. It doesn't include everything, so make sure you check the documentation, because some things have not made it into the sample queries. The other thing I also like is that I can also play around with the beta endpoint, because Graph also has an ever present Graph beta endpoint where we test new functionality and we add more data into the API. So for example, if I were to run the same exact query, which is the me, i.e. my profile, check out, we have like what, 10 lines of code here. If I run the beta endpoint, I get a lot more information now, right? So this is something that you can look at. Also, we provide you with code snippets. So if you want to see how that would look like in your code, JavaScript, Objective-C, we give you the samples. So you can grab that quickly and put in there. You can do filtering, you can do paging and what have you. So a lot of functionality with Graph as well. So I think that leaves us with 1 minute before the end of my session. So I'll just take you back to my one slide I want you to remember. So we just did Graph Explorer. We talked about B2C and how you can provide a personalized experience to your users, your consumers. And again, if you want to see more of what I told you today, we just scratched the surface. Make sure to join us every Monday and Friday at 8 a.m. Pacific time or 4 p.m. UK time. See, we even include UK because I used to be from the UK. Has to be UK. And 5 p.m. Central European time. We'd love to have you. We love questions. Let me see if there's any other questions. This session is going to be uploaded. And you can reach out to me on Twitter if you have any questions. I'll be more than happy to help you out. Right, Secure Software. Thank you very much for joining me today.
Christos, thank you so much for today's session. It's been such a pleasure to have you. And thank you to everyone who joined as well, and for all of your excellent questions. If you do have any more at all, feel free to post them in now. If not, I am sharing, Christos, your Twitter handles for people who might want to follow up afterwards.
Perfect. Yes, and I'll try to follow up with some of the questions I was not able to answer today. So make sure to reach out to me if I haven't answered your question.
Perfect. Okay. Lots of thank yous coming through. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your day, and really hope to see everyone at the next Reactor session.
Thank you. Have a nice day, everyone.